United Methodist Church today. As we just read in Matthew, Jesus tells his disciples that they're honoring him by reaching out to the poor and marginalized of society. For 10 days this past August, 22 U.S. missioners joined a team of about 60 Filipino missioners in Mindanao to listen to the oppressed, advocate for their rights, and heal the sick. With much prayer, trust, flexibility, and compassion, our team reached out to individuals and families whom others may consider the least of these in humble service to God. Many young adults and United Methodist clergy members comprise the mission team. Even our United Methodist representative to the United Nations joined our delegation. But what was special about this mission trip was that it had an interfaith component to it. Friends from the Catholic and Buddhist traditions joined us as well, and it goes to show how service and advocacy can be extended to all, by all. We departed from LAX on August 8th and transferred from Manila to Davao, where we were then greeted by many local Filipino missioners. The city was getting ready for the Karayawan Festival, so we were welcomed with colorful lines of flags that stretched across the streets and cultural music and art in the Apo View Hotel. After a day of adjusting from the jet lag, getting to know the missioners, and going through the orientation, we were off and ready to embark on our mission to Talaingad. Before we left the hotel, Pastor Sandy Richards made a statement to the Filipino media with us standing behind her to let the community know where we were going and our purpose. It was important to make our trip high profile to create a protective bubble around us as we did our mission work. The more people who knew about who we were and what kind of help we were going to provide, the less likely we would be bothered or harassed. Mindanao can be dangerous depending where you are. The government is corrupt, and people are sometimes abducted, arrested, tortured, and killed for empowering the Filipino people and fighting for their rights. Fortunately, we were guaranteed more safety because many of us are American. The United States has such a powerful influence in the Philippines economy that if anything happens to an American in the Philippines, a huge reaction from the people here and from our government could hinder the relationship with the Filipino government, and they don't want that at all. Personally and fortunately, I never felt like I was in much danger. So we traveled north by bus through cities and many miles of banana plantations on our way to Talaingad and Davao del Norte. The country is very export-oriented and import-dependent. On that ride up to Talaingad, we learned that bananas are one of the main exports of the Philippines. Many rice fields have been converted to banana plantations for exporting purposes. Unfortunately, we know that bananas aren't as sustainable as rice is, and the Philippines now has to import rice from Vietnam, the country they taught how to grow rice. You may ask, why don't they just convert the banana fields back to rice fields? The soil is shaped in a way that is not sustainable for rice growing, and it would take much labor and money in order to convert the fields. Rice also requires a lot of water, and the large-scale corporations that have taken precedence in the nation are polluting the water in much of the Philippines. Finally, we reached the base of the mountain before ascending to the Otomanobo tribe in Talaingad, and we split up into groups of 2 or 3 to ride the motorcycles called hobble-hobbles. We pile on with the driver and ride up the mountain for about 30 to 45 minutes. The ride was bumpy and fast, but the view was amazing. Upon arriving, people from about 80 tribes from all around the area greeted us. It was so interesting to see the tribal leaders, known as the Dachus, dressed in their vibrant traditional clothing. Much of the communication between the indigenous people and the missioners was through gestures with the occasional translation from a local missioner. From the 3 days and 3 nights that we spent there, it amazed me to see how happy and simply the people lived. The Otomanobo people lived in huts they constructed themselves, and their only possessions was probably a plate, a fork, the clothes on their back, and a piece of jewelry. They lived peacefully and generously with each other. When we passed out a snack to the children, we would see some of them take half their portion and either save it for a meal later or share it with a family member. I would see kids aged 5 and younger with an infant on their hip, taking care of them and making sure they were fed. It was also not uncommon to see young teenage mothers breastfeeding their child while holding on to another and then seeing 2 others run around their legs. The doctors told us that normally they would not need our help, but due to these circumstances, they really appreciated what we were doing. On our medically intense mission day there, we split into 3 teams: the medical team, the psychosocial team that I was a part of, and the documentation team. The medical team performed numerous checkups, surgeries, circumcisions, and assessed that the majority of the problems were due to malnutrition. Many vitamins and over-the-counter drugs were also administered. The psychosocial component of the mission was really fun and interactive. We gathered all of the children together, played games, told them stories, and drew pictures. For the games, we would ask them to organize themselves into different groups, like by t-shirt color, height, or birthday. Many of the children didn't know what month they were born in, so we had about 50 January birthdays. And then when it came to October, there were only 4 of us missioners there. We also split off by age, and we had the children draw their ideal school. Most of the schools looked like the one they had in the community there, with the same tree, flowers, and Filipino flag outside it. I asked them why it was important that they had the flag at their school, and one of the little ones said that you need to have a flag in order to sing the national anthem each morning. So the next day, we had meetings with specific groups of people in the community to learn about their struggles and the way that we can help. The doctors requested 3 things: continued support for their community's education, health, and livelihood. The government does not support their schools at all, so their wish is to have more buildings to support the increasing number of students attending the school, and to extend the school by at least 1 grade each year. They also wish to develop their own community health system to address both their curative and preventative health care needs. Finally, they need to construct better and efficient drinking water systems, their own corn and rice mills, and environmentally apt electricity systems for their villages. All of the missioners were amazed by their gratitude, simple happiness, and vibrant culture. Dances were performed for us that portrayed their struggle with the Filipino government. Government soldiers would come up to their hill community and do their military exercises right next to the school, and actually go into the school to harass the teachers, all of which would consequently scare the children. They eat the community's animals and rape the women. One woman thanked one of the young adult missioners before we left, saying, "Thank you for not taking off my shirt." When we asked her why she said that, she told us that when people foreign from the tribe come up to the Otomanobo community, they've raped her. We told her that of course we wouldn't do that, and we were only there to help. The Adatus have to deal with this military presence. What tends to happen is when the military comes up, the whole community picks up the little that they have, and they either travel to another tribe or days and days into the mountains to escape the military. When we went, the place where we went was not a militarized area, but there are militarized zones and schools where the military presence is more prominent. There is also a logging company that is encroaching on their land. For the Otomanobo, their land is their livelihood. Illegal logging is a huge problem in the Philippines. Not only does it negatively affect the environment, but it pushes the indigenous people off the land that they've been living on for generations. What was clearly evident to all of us was the Otomanobo's strength and pride of their culture. You could see it in their stories and their smiles. The kids were kids running around and laughing all the time, and the Datus were so friendly and open to conversing with all of us missioners. It was a beautiful place that was hard to leave. A couple days later, we went to the city of Pantukan to talk with the small-scale miners. Before ascending the mountain on more hobble-hobbles, we met with the mayor of Pantukan. Again, it was great to promote the publicity for our mission. In our meeting, we found out the mayor was actually in favor of the small-scale miners and supported their rights, unlike many government officials who would rather see large-scale mining corporations take over. The small-scale miners talked about how they would partake in strip mining, where they would follow a strip of metal up the mountain. By doing so, they minimize the amount of waste they produce while still excavating what they need. Unfortunately, large-scale miners, many of which have their headquarters in the United States, are coming in and scooping out the mountain, which releases toxins from the earth which pollute the environment, along with the machinery that they use. These large-scale miners, along with the logging companies, also push the Filipinos out of the land they've been living on for generations. Despite the heavy rain that lasted the 4 hours we talked with the small-scale miners, we decided to ride back down the mountain. As we did so, we were able to see the effects of the deforestation firsthand. People who lived along the path near the bottom of the mountain told us that the trails were flooded, so we'd have to go another way. We took a detour, but still ran into some flooding. The motorcycle stalled, and so we got out and walked our way through. At one point, the water was about waist high for me, and you know how Filipinos are generally a little bit shorter? One lady was like, "It was up to here on me." We were also told not to rub our eyes because there are chemicals from the mining operations in the water. There are no streetlights, so we were doing all of this in the dark, and we were walking through what seemed like rivers. And this was only from the 4 hours of rain while we were up there. So it's crazy to see what soil erosion, illegal logging, and large-scale mining can do. Luckily, we made it back safe and sound, and the mayor even gave us a nice dinner when we returned to the city. So as you can see, the mission trip consisted of a lot of listening to other stories and figuring out ways to spread awareness to their situation. A while after Pantucan, we went to visit Vanessa de los Reyes, a young political prisoner detained at a hospital. She told us her story about how she was part of the New People's Army, the revolutionary organization in the Philippines that fights for rights and educates the public about what rights they have. On one day, in May 2011, she was meeting with her unit of the NPA when the government found out their location and sent their special forces to ambush them. In the combat, she went in to rescue her friend who was wounded, but in doing so, she was shot in the spine. She was paralyzed from the waist down and then was airlifted to the hospital where she was put under heavy watch. Since then, she hasn't received proper medical care and still has bullet fragments in her back. And to think this shy girl wearing a SpongeBob t-shirt right in front of me went through all of this and was an active leader of the NPA was just mind-blowing. This whole trip was a humbling experience. It put into perspective how fortunate we are to have what we have, but then at the same time, realize that happiness and strength can be derived from having almost nothing. Us missioners can now say, wait a minute, those are our friends who are being pushed out of their homes due to corporate greed. It makes me think, is there such a thing as a content Christian with all of this hurting happening to the least of these, as Matthew mentions in the parable of Jesus? What can we do to turn our lives into ones of service to those who have no voice? I'm going to list off some ways to help, so if you'd like to write these down, you can go ahead and get out a pen and paper. First of all, you can spread the word about the injustices that are happening in the Philippines. Just because someone doesn't know about a problem doesn't mean it's not a reality for somebody else, and everyone we talked to said that they want others to hear about their struggles. Prayer for resolution to these issues and peace between the government and Indigenous peoples' communities is also vital. Donations are always welcome too. It only takes $4,500 to start 7th grade in Saludbungan School for the Automanobo community, and for $100, the Father Pops Foundation can make 6,000 capsules of herbal medicines that are free for the patients who need them. You may also talk to me after this service if you'd like more information about serving on our mission team. We're going back this summer to continue our mission and advocacy work, so I'd like to invite any of you who are interested to think and pray about joining us. We're really looking to expand the team for this next trip. The mission will be from July 10th through 17th, and if you'd like to attend the International Human Rights Conference, you would stay for 4 more days and arrive back in the U.S. on July 21st. Again, please talk to me if you feel like God is calling you to serve on the mission, or at least find more information about it. Have you ever asked yourself what God's mission for you is? I encourage you to pray hard about this, thinking about the talents He has given you, your passions, and the opportunities He presents you. There are so many ways to serve God through serving others, whether it is in this church building, at your school or office, in your community, or in another country. Your mission ground is beneath your feet wherever you go, for we are all commissioned to make disciples of all the nations. By identifying the needs of others and attending to them with great energy and love, we carry out this mission. As people of the light, we must follow God's call to be sent into the darkness in order to be a light for others. God gets the ordinary people to do His work. So if you feel something tugging at your heart to serve someone else, at home or across seas, take the initiative to invest in it and pursue it. When you give yourself in service to God, watch and see the blessings that will unfold before you and transform your life and others. Thank you.